Alex. He was supposed to be here. I'm sure he's probably having technical difficulties. So meanwhile, we're going to be holding the fort. And today we're going to be talking about the Hardy-Weinberg equation or equilibrium. And what it is it's an equation that gives you a percentage of what you're going to get from a population. To make it easier to comprehend, we're actually okay. Alex just showed up. Let me bring him in. Alex, how's it going? Good morning. I can't hear you. You're muted. Yeah. There you go.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Let me adjust my picture so I can see myself better.
Good morning, Adam Fields. We got D. Taylor in the house. We got Maurice Humboldt. Appreciate you guys. Alex, I was going to tell you, move the mic out a little bit because it's touch. There you go. There you go.
Is this better?
Yeah, it was making some
I got to
noise.
get a windscreen for this mic because of the noise it makes.
God bless. Excuse me. Thank you.
I'm bringing up my PowerPoint. 1 second.
I was going to give you a suggestion, Alex.
Sure.
I just saw a video online that was made 12 years ago that explains the Hardy-Weinberg problem or equation.
Okay.
Would it be okay if we play that for a minute, and then this way we could just talk directly with the viewers? Okay.
This way it gives them a beginning, and then I can go into my explanation as best as I can.
Yeah, let's jump into it here. Let me go ahead and bring it up. And here we go, guys.
Mr. Anderson, in this podcast, I'm going to hopefully show you how to solve Hardy-Weinberg problems. Here's Hardy, here's Weinberg. They came up with this wonderful idea of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. It's used by geneticists and evolutionary biologists, but little did they know they would plague biology students forever as they try to solve these problems. And so this would be a typical Hardy-Weinberg problem. We've got 16% of the population unable to taste a chemical, and they're asking a number of questions like how many people are heterozygous, what's the allele frequencies. And when I have students who struggle with this, basically all these terms are kind of swimming around in their head and they have no idea what's what or where to even start. And so I want to kind of go back to basics and show you what a gene pool is, and then show you how to solve some of these problems. And so let's start with a sample population. Let's make this population really, really small. Let's say we have 10 people. So we got 10 people here, and half of them had red hair. And so to have red hair, you have to have 2 red alleles. So this would be a person with red hair, red hair, red hair, red hair, red hair. So half of the people have red hair, and then half the people don't. And so this would be somebody who maybe has black hair, or this could be somebody who has blonde hair, or it doesn't matter, but they don't have red hair. And since it is a recessive, you have to have 2 copies of it. Okay, so this would be the population, and this would be their phenotypes, physically what they look like. But if I take all those genes in a population and scramble them up and put them in a pool, then it becomes a gene pool. Now they're not associated with one individual anymore. And so basically, this is a gene pool. And so there are 2 values that I want to throw out. The first one is P, and the second one is Q. P is going to be the allele frequency of the dominant trait. Okay, so what's the dominant trait? That's going to be this non-red. And so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of them. And there are 20 total alleles here. There are 20 total genes. And so our P value would be 0.3. And so now how do we figure out the Q value? Well, the Q value, I could count up all the red ones. It's going to be 14. And then I divide that by 20, and it's going to be 0.7. Another quick way to do that is if you figure out that this is 0.3, P plus Q will always equal 1. And so I could have just taken 1 minus 0.3, and that would have given me my Q value. And so what does this mean? Well, in a gene pool, this means that 30% or 0.3, be cautious of percents because they can get you in trouble when you're solving the problems. But 30% of the individuals are going to be, of the genes, are going to be of the dominant, and 70% are going to be of the recessive. Now, if you know anything about genetics, we can figure out where the rest of the Hardy-Weinberg comes from. So what are the odds if I were to just grab one of these, if I were just randomly grab one of these genes out of the gene pool, what is the odds that that is going to be recessive? In other words, what are the odds that it's going to be red? Well, the odds would be 7 out of 10. What are the odds if I pull 2 of them out that they're going to be red? Well, knowing anything about the law of multiplication, that's going to be 7 out of 10 times 7 out of 10. And so that's going to be 49 out of 10, or that's going to be 0.49. So grabbing 2 of the reds, it's going to be 0.49. Let's do that again with the blues. What are the odds of me pulling a blue out and then another blue out? It's going to be 3 out of 10 times 3 out of 10. And that's going to be 9 out of 100. And that's going to be 0.09. Okay, so for me to get 2 of the recessive, it was 0.49. For me to get 2 of the dominant, it's going to be 0.09. So what are the odds of me pulling out a blue and then a red? Well, to do that, it would be a 7 out of 10 of the red times a 3 out of 10 of the blue. So that's going to be 21 out of 10 out of 100. But I don't have to necessarily pull out a red on the first time and then a blue on the second. I also could do it by getting a blue on the first time, 3 out of 10 times 7 out of 10. And so that would be a 21 out of 10 as well, out of 100. And so I have to add these two because I could get a red and a blue one in 2 ways. And so when we look at the equation for Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, let's go to that. Where do we get this p squared, 2pq, q squared? P squared is basically taking the allele frequency of the dominant. When we were solving this problem, that was 0.3. And then we simply square it. And that's going to tell me how many individuals are homozygous dominant. In other words, they have 1 of each of the genes. What are the odds of me doing this one? In this case, our recessive value is 0.7 squared. So that's going to be 0.49. That's a homozygous recessive individuals. And then the heterozygous individuals are going to be 2 times p times q, because you could get it either red, blue, or blue, red. So either of those. And so this is where this term comes from. And so basically, even though I may have lost you at this point, the big thing to remember is that if they talk about the allele frequency, then they're talking about the p-value and the q-value. If they're talking about individual people or individual organisms or individual phenotypes, then they're talking about p squared, 2pq, and q squared. Because it's vital when you're trying to tackle one of these problems that you know what you're given on day 1 or on the first step. And so let's try this problem again. So what does it say? It says, let's break down this thing. 16% of a population is unable to taste this chemical. These
All right, guys. Alex, I'm going to have you move the mic out just a little bit because I could hear you breathing. There you go. There
like this or no?
Let me see.
Test, 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 test.
Breathe.
I can't breathe you all the time.
You're good. You're good. You're good. We'll
Okay.
play it by ear. Pretty much, I thought that was a pretty good video. Yeah, you're breathing out. Lift it up and push it out a little bit. Push it out a little bit. There you go. Talk now.
Is that better? Is that better?
A lot better. A lot better.
Okay. I got to get a filter for this mic.
Yeah, guys, I purposefully wanted to show you guys the video. That way we don't spend too much time breaking it down for you, and we're able to answer possibly more questions. If you wanted to ask a direct question to Alex, it gives us
I have a brief presentation I wanted to give the audience first. If you don't
go
mind.
ahead, please. Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Let me see how to do that because I'm not good with this program for some reason. It's not like Zoom, which is easier. 1 second. I'm trying to adjust the screen while also having a different screen to work with. So just 1 second. I'm struggling with these 2 monitors here.
Yeah, guys, but basically this Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, all it is giving you the possibilities of what you're going to get from a population. And again, any one individual's numbers may differ than what the calculation is. The calculation is based on a whole, right? Pulling from a population. So this is when would be a good time to use the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, Alex? Is it when you're pairing two dogs so you can predict?
Well,
Say,
let me go to the presentation and then we'll go into specific questions because otherwise
okay,
I'll be out of order.
you'll be out of order. All right, no problem.
So then, window. Okay. Can everybody see this PowerPoint I made or not yet?
Yeah, it's up there.
Okay. So we're going to discover why is this important. There are 5 principal assumptions of this equation, which may not always hold true. Final tips and takeaways. So the equation only works for large-scale expression of a dominant recessive traits. In other words, this is not a calculation you can use in your yard to figure out your own dogs. This is an equation for the breed as a whole, not for your specific kennel.
Okay.
So you cannot do this with even 30, 40 individuals. This assumes thousands. Actually, it assumes an infinite number of individuals, but you have to have over 1,000 for this equation to even work. So if you think this will apply to your yard and you can take that away from it, the answer is you can't. This is not designed for small population sizes.
Okay.
The next thing to understand is these are the assumptions the equation makes. Now, not all these assumptions are actually true. Okay, the first assumption is the organisms are diploid. Well, that's true for everything except plants. So that assumption is true. Only sexual reproduction occurs. That's true. Only plants have asexual reproduction. Everything else has sexual reproductions. The next assumption is generations are non-overlapping and mating is random. That's actually not true, right? But that's the assumption. Because generations are overlapping. Because you can live in the same time as your father or your mother, right? So your lifetime overlaps theirs, right? So
Okay.
this is not true, right? But it assumes that is true. It assumes population is infinitely large. Again, it's not infinitely large, but it has to be large. Or it doesn't apply to your yard. It applies to the breed as a whole, any given breed, whether it's horses or dogs. Allele frequencies are equal in the sexes. That's also not true. For example, if you have color blindness, it's usually in men, not in women, right? So certain allele frequencies for color blindness only come in men, and certain diseases which affect only women only come in women. So allele frequencies are for all genes are not equal in the sexes, but this assumes that they are equal in all the sexes. And the next assumption that this equation makes in order to be true is that there's no migration, gene flow, admixture, or mutation. Well, that's also not true. You do have mutation. You do have gene flow. For example, if I take a dog out of Germany, a German Shepherd, let's say, and I bring him to the US, that's gene flow. I'm taking a completely different gene pool and moving it into the US gene pool. That is gene flow, right? Or if I take Arabian Stallion and I mix him with Arabian bred in the US, that's gene flow, right? So that's not true.
Can you
And
can you
mutation
explain
happens.
can you explain what a diploid organism is? I'm sure there's several
Yeah,
people.
okay. So a diploid organism has 2 alleles per gene
Okay.
versus 1. So in order to be diploid, every allele is the definition of a gene. It looks kind of like an X, like 2 parentheses, back to back, like this, like an X almost. And the X is one half of the chromosome is the X, which is this shape, the moon shape, and then the other one is this part of the X. So the X is the diploid gene, the 2 alleles which make up the gene. That's why it's called diploid 2.
Okay.
So there's a couple of assumptions. So there's actually 2 equations. The first is P plus Q equals 1. So if P is 0.7, you already know Q is 0.3 because the sum of one and the other has to equal 1. Or 1 minus Q equals P. In other words, if one is 0.4, the other is 0.6. You follow? So this is the first rule. Kind of obvious, but it has to be stated. The P represents the number of homogeneous dominant genes. Q represents the number of recessive genes. Now, what's with this equation that is not expressed but is assumed? It assumes all genes are monogenetic, not
Okay.
polygenetic. So the assumption of this equation is you're only dealing with characteristics which are determined by a single gene, which is not true for dogs or people or anything for that matter. So this is an equation that only works with a gene that is a specific trait, which is monogenetic, not polygenetic. So that's the other assumption of this equation. Otherwise, this will not work. Now you can have multiple monogenetic traits and still create an equation, but they must be multiple monogenetic traits. In other words, if this is only assuming 2, you can make an equation with 3. You can make an equation with 4. But it doesn't work if it's polygenetic trait. So that's the other thing to understand. Now, so the way it works is, as I explained, P is the frequency of the dominant gene, Q is the frequency of the recessive trait. There are 2 alleles for a given trait, hence the word diploid, and P plus Q equals 1. So we made this little Q drawing here. So let's look at it on exceptions. What happens? Why, if this rule has so many exceptions, why is this rule useful? Well, both of these men were physicists, not biologists, which is surprising that they wrote an equation that applies to biology. But if you remember Newton's first law of motion, right? An object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by an external force. First law, second law, an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by an external force. That's Newton's law of motion. Well, this equation, Hardy-Weinberg, is a biological equivalent to Newton's first law. So Newton's first law is an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by an external force. The Hardy-Weinberg expression says a gene pool will remain constant with constant allele frequency unless something causes it to change. So it's almost like Newton's first law, but applied to biology. It's like your gene pool is fixed in time and forever frozen. And the ratio of recessive and dominant traits is forever frozen and constant and never to change unless acted upon by an external force. That is the basic idea of this equation. Kind of like Newton's equation for motion. It's kind of like this equation for genetics. So that's how it works. Now, so what are the exceptions? Well, the first exception is selection. So it assumes there's no selection, but in fact, there is selection. If you're a breeder, you're selecting animals you will breed together, right? If you're in nature, nature selects the strong to survive, not the weak to survive. So there is selection. So that is something the equation assumes not to be in place, but in fact, it is in place, right? The next assumption is mutation. Mutation is a 10 to the power of -4, 10 to the -8. For those who don't remember, 10 to a -power is 1 over 10 to the 4th. So 10 to the +4th is the same thing as 10 to the -4th. 10 to the 8th, 10 to the 9th is a billion. 10 to the 8th is 100 million. So mutation is 100 millionth of the genes of a population, but it's still a number that exists. So you can't assume no mutation. It does take place. Even though it's small, 10 to the -8th, mutation does take place. The other assumption is there's no migration. When genetically linked populations are linked together, in general, allele frequencies will become more homogeneous among the populations. Some models for migration inherently include non-random mating, called the Wechberg effect, and the model assumes no genetic drift and no migration. Again, not true. There is genetic drift and there is migration. If a caribou of one herd infiltrates another herd and mates with the does of that other herd, well, that's migration. His genes from his herd migrated to the other herd, right? So that's gene flow. So that's, again, the equation assumes that doesn't happen, which is not true. It does happen. Sex linkage. Again, the equation assumes there's no sex-linked traits. Again, not true, because there are sex-linked traits. Now, in mammals, the male determines the sex of the child. In birds, the female determines that. Let me bring up a word, and I'll show it to you as a Punnett square, because that's I think that's useful to understand. Or, you know what? I'll show examples later. Let me just go through this PowerPoint and then I'll show examples. So just 1 second, guys. I don't want to break away from explaining to then showing examples. It'll break the flow. Okay, so we heard about all the exceptions, right? Now, this is how it works in a Punnett square. So in a Punnett square, P is the dot. Can you guys see this or no?
Yes.
Can you guys?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
seeing it.
Okay. So it's P plus Q equals 1. Okay. So 1 equals P squared plus 2PQ plus Q squared. If you remember, this is a binomial expression. You know, remember algebra X squared plus 2AX equal plus B squared. In other words, you can factor P plus A times the other P plus A. It's a binomial. So
Okay.
this times that is double P. P times this Q is PQ. This P and this Q equals PQ, and this Q and this P equals QQ. So this is a double recessive. This is a double dominant, and this is a dominant masking a recessive. So P is the dominant allele frequency, Q is the recessive. So P squared is PP. You know, P times P is P squared. 2PQ is the same thing as 2 times the factor P times Q, and Q squared is Q times Q. So the math is a simple binomial expression, but well, what's the point of it? Why is it useful? Well, oh, wrong slide. So this is how allele frequency flows in terms of the volume of carriers of a specific allele pair. So assuming there's a 3 allele case, three alleles which are monogenetic traits, not polygenetic traits.
Okay.
The shaded area represents the volume of genes of that particular effect. So notice the more dark the area, or in this case double A, see the white area is a bigger square than this little CC of the area. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the size of the boxes tells you the spread of the allelic frequency. The size of the squares is the spread of the gene. So if you have a let's say you do a embark test on your dogs, and you see a specific gene for head size or head shape, let's say, right? And you see a specific number of that value. And let's say you see the same trait in another dog you'll pair him with. You can say, well, at which frequency can I increase the allele frequency of that trait? So it'll be Q, because it's recessive, let's say, times let's say Q is 0.4, so it's 0.4 squared, times the other one, 0.4 squared, times the other one, 0.4 squared. In other words, you can see how you can increase a specific trait, and the precise numeric value that trait has among all the other traits to increase allelic frequency of that trait.
Okay, let me stop you right there, Alex, for
Right.
just a moment. Let me
Right.
bring up so people can see directly. I have Embark up right now, and what I want to do is share a screen, and
Sure,
we're
I'm going
going
to
to
stop
go
sharing
with
my screen. 1 second.
yeah. No, you're good. You're
Oh,
good.
I can do it. I can not. Okay, I thought I had to
Yeah.
do both at the same time. I'm
No,
sorry.
you don't have to.
I didn't know that
So
worked.
what I want to show them is what you're talking about. This is a monogenetic gene right here, the muzzle length. Okay.
Right.
You see AA, and let's see what AA stands for. Here you go. Basically, dogs that have the short length muzzle or brachiocephalic breeds, such as English Bulldog, Pug, Pekingese, have 2 copies of the derived A allele. The assumption can be made that the A allele is for a shorter muzzle in the American Bully, whereas the C, if you have a C instead of an A as a result, you're going to have a medium to longer muzzle. So what Alex is saying is where this comes up that you can use it very effectively is, say you have a dog that has AA and you're breeding to a dog that has AC or AC, and you want to know what's going to be the allele frequency or what's going to be the probability of how many pups in that litter are going to come out with a short muzzle, full short muzzle, AA, versus short muzzle carriers, which are going to be AC. Okay, so I'm just giving
Q in this example because
I'm sorry.
2PQ is the double, right. Just to go
Yes.
back to the equation, AC, your gene for short muzzle is A.
Yes.
So that's like P squared in this equation.
Correct.
So the A is P squared. That gene is what's P squared. The AC, which is the mix of short and long muzzle, that's
Yes.
2PQ.
Correct.
And the double recessive, which is the short muzzle, is Q squared.
Go to the previous screen, that
Right.
white and green screen, so people could yeah, that one right there. There you go.
Right.
So
Right.
basically, what Alex is letting you know is that A, right, is going to be substituted for the Q squared because it's a recessive gene, right? You need both of the same for it to show up.
Right.
And the C, which is going to be the dominant of the two, is going to be the P squared. And when you have the AC, or the middle ground, if you will, is going to be 2PQ, right? And essentially, when you do the graph like Alex is showing here, you see how everything proportionally falls in place. All right.
That's right. That's right. Now, speaking of graph, you hit the next point. You're going to
Okay.
then be able to predict at which point which genes come up. And so in this example, I'm going to first explain the colors. We're using
Okay.
P's, like Mendel did. He used P's. You know, Gregor Mendel was a
Yes.
monk, and he came up with the idea of particles of inheritance, which we now call genes. He makes long P's with short P's, and he wanted to figure out how many of the plants that result would be long P's, short P's, or a mix of both. So he used P's. So this is actually going back all the way to Mendel. So
That's
anyhow,
right.
P is the yellow peas. Okay, PQ is the mix of the yellow and the green. It's
Okay.
the dominant and recessive. It's the recessive masked by the dominant, but it looks like the dominant trait, but there's a recessive hiding behind it. So that's the yellow color, and QQ is the green peas. Now notice this graph, which is the trending toward the combined trait, is a bell-shaped curve. This one is a parabola because p squared, y equals x squared parabola, or
Yep.
y equals p squared. So this is a parabola going this way, and this is a parabola going the opposite way, or 1 over x squared, a downward parabola, right? Remember algebra, y equals x squared is a parabola, right? So anything p squared, is anything to the second power is a parabola. So that's why it's a parabola this way versus this way, and this represents the admixture of both traits. And then you can see the frequency of each trait appearing by a decimal value. Anyhow, I'm not going to go crazy with this. So basically, this is what Arul just explained. P is the frequency of the dominant gene, Q squared is the recessive gene, and 2PQ is the admixture of both dominant and recessive. Now, what is the purpose of this? This becomes a method of estimation of heritability within the breed and across breeds. Okay, so it tells you which characteristics are going to be highly heritable within a breed, whether it's for a short nose or long ears or floppy ears, whatever the characteristic is. It helps you determine the selection pressure of dominant genes or high allelic frequency of recessive genes. Now, dominant is always expressed, but remember we talked in the last video about a high allele frequency of recessive? If I combine the same grandpapa multiple times in a pedigree, he's not dominant for every trait, but
Right.
the frequency of his traits increases. So it acts like it's a dominant. It's not a dominant, but the high allelic frequency, the high repetition of recessive is so frequent, it seems like it's a dominant trait, but it's not. Still a recessive trait. But by line breeding on that dog, I'm increasing the allelic frequency of that trait. So that's what this says. You can determine the selection pressure.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. I skipped one. And it allows you to mathematically estimate the abundance of undesirable recessive traits. So if you can get an embark test for an undesirable trait, you can breed it out by calculating, I'm not going to show you how to calculate, but take my word for it. You can calculate how to remove an undesirable trait in a breed, but somebody has to be the steward of the breed and agree to do that. You cannot do it in an individual yard, but you can get a feeling for it if you have enough dogs. By that I mean at least 100 dogs. Then you can
Okay.
rule out. This works in large numbers. In other words, this doesn't work. So here is a basic bell-shaped curve. The line in the middle is the median or the mean. So you have one standard deviation, which is about here, away from the mean. You have a positive standard deviation here from the mean, which is about 13% from the mean. Here you have about 2 standard deviations from the mean. So you could figure out the number of individuals with a specific phenotype, which will be at the mean or a standard deviation plus or minus from the mean, to give you the average allelic frequency change in a given population. In other words, if you wanted to modify a breed and you wanted to do it mathematically, which nobody does, but this is something you could do. And then very quickly an example, because all of this makes sense with examples. So again, the assumptions: population is very large. There are no mutations. Again, not true. There are mutations. There's no migration. Again, not true. There is migration. There's no natural selection. Not true. There is natural selection. Or you wouldn't believe in Darwin's theory of evolution if you didn't believe in natural selection. And there's no sexual selection. Mating is random. Well, that's not true. The female chooses the male she likes to breed with, and the male chooses the female he likes to breed with. It's not like any man and woman randomly have babies. You have to be attracted to your partner and select that partner to have babies with that partner, right? It's not like you could randomly have babies with any partner, right? You can be attracted to that partner to create a relationship and then have babies with that partner. Same in dogs or people. So this is also not true. Mating is not random. There is selection by sex and attractiveness and physical fitness. So these assumptions are generalized assumptions, or the equation doesn't hold true. But assuming all of the above is true, then again, P is the frequency of dominant, PQ is recessive, and we already saw the equations: P plus Q equals 1, P squared plus 2PQ plus Q equals 1. So let's say there's 200 million alleles in a gene pool and 800 million alleles M in the gene pool. Then we have 0.2 plus 0.8 equals 1. That's the first part, P plus Q equals 1. And then we have 0.2 squared, which is 0.04, plus 2 times 0.2 times 0.8, which is 0.32, plus 0.8 squared, which is 0.64 equals 1. This would be, for example, useful to calculate. Let's say you have color blindness in a man, right? Usually men are colorblind, not women. You could figure out the number of carriers of the gene for color blindness and figure out how to get rid of it. That would be an example where you could use this equation. Or you could use this equation to figure out how color blindness is passed. Anyhow, the Hardy-Weinberg equation assumes equilibrium is there, but in reality it's never achieved. But it's useful in studying populations. That's it. Nothing fancy.
Okay.
So it's not as earth-shattering as you think. The equations for coefficient of inbreeding and the coefficient of relationship I gave you last time are much more applicable to a specific breeder and a specific yard. Those are much more interesting to the average breeder.
Correct.
But you're going to hear a lot about this equation, and I don't want to make a big to-do about it. It's just an equation. It basically talks about large population sizes and specific traits. It's very useful in ruling out disease-based genes, because you can assign a numeric frequency, graph it, and figure out. You can do a binomial times 2 and use linear algebra to solve 2 simultaneous equations simultaneously. For those who had math, linear algebra can be used to solve 4 simultaneous equations at the same time using what's called a determinant. Anyhow, you can figure out bad genes and how to get around them.
And how to
using this
get them out.
equation.
And that's
That's
this.
pretty much. That's the whole
this
usefulness of this equation. Yeah.
Okay. So
That's pretty much the whole thing.
so let me play devil's advocate, right? And
Right,
let me
right.
start making sense of this for the individual breeder. So if you're an individual breeder, and I'm sure it would be much more simplified. But let's say that you've been breeding for the last 10 years.
Right.
And you never did an embark test.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden you've decided to embark your entire yard for the sake of numbers to keep it basic. Let's say you have 10 dogs.
Okay.
And you went ahead and you tested, and half of your population, 50%, has this bad gene, whatever it may be. And to make it even more difficult, you can't just get rid of those
No.
dogs, because let's say 4 out of the 5 are females, and the one male that has it is your main stud in your yard.
What would you do?
So yeah, so
So the answer comes to that. That's a good question. So
yeah,
can everybody see this book?
we can now. Let me bring you in. There you go.
Okay. So the book is called Animal Breeding Plans by Jay Lush, and he has an answer to your question on this page 131, and he actually corrects how to correct the population using variability and gene flow. But it's he shows how to shift the graph of the bad gene.
Okay.
So the answer to your question, it's not a simple answer, but basically you have to use selection and shift the frequency of alleles of the bad gene out by introducing more you have to decrease line breeding and inbreeding to a 0 initially, and then
Right.
restart on the clean members, which don't carry
Okay.
that trait. That's the short answer. But if anybody wants a good read where this equation is used for more than half the book, and it's very readable, it's not really a math book. Animal Breeding by Jay Lush, written in 1909.
Okay.
That's how long ago we known about this problem. I recommend
Wow.
everybody buy a copy if they want to. It's not very expensive. It's only like $10. And he shows graphs of how to get rid of certain genes in cows.
Wow.
But the same thing can be applied to dogs. I mean, this is something we've known about for 100+ years.
Here's
But
the advantage. Here's the
yeah,
advantage we have today. I don't know if
right,
you agree, Alex, but
right,
the advantage you have is because you're able to genetically test in a situation such as that.
right,
Yeah, I would probably be breeding obviously the affected member to the non-affected member.
right,
Then I know I'm going to be producing carriers that
right,
will only reproduce an affected member if bred to another carrier or
correct,
full-blown affected member.
right,
Because you're able to retest, I
right,
think that Embark makes it so much easier.
right. This man here in 1909,
Right,
he couldn't do that.
right.
So
Just
he went
calculation.
ahead and created graphs and graphs of graphs through observation of actual animals
Yeah,
in a cow herd across multiple cow herds, because he was using cows. And this is 40 years of work,
yeah.
because he was using living animals to figure it out and graphing the results. He was a professor at the Illinois University. So this was written Iowa State College, it says, professor of animal breeding.
Yeah,
So the man didn't have Embark. This is 1909.
of course.
So he went through a lot of math and a lot of trouble, and he describes his work over 40 years of cow breeding to figure out how to get rid of bad genes. So this book is a Bible of how to use math and your brain
Yes.
to figure out something. Now we have Embark. We do a little swab,
Well,
$150. It's easy.
well, the reason I bring that up is
Right,
because a lot of old time breeders
right.
will say they don't want to use genetic testing because for what? I
Nonsense.
have my
Yeah,
own system. I can see dogs. that are ill, whatever the case may be. And here, right, here you're showing where today's technology trumps anything that could have been done in the
Right.
past as far as
Right.
getting the information exactly as to who's a carrier and who has it full
Right.
blown and who doesn't have it.
Right.
So,
I mean, man took 40 years to figure it out. 40 years of his life. He wrote a book of
right,
his work. I mean, I think this book is worth reading just to see how people did it before, who were using
sure,
scientific method and math. So the whole idea, he used math and graphs to figure out how to do bad genes. So, I mean, that's an amazing body of work. And we now have Google, and we can Google it and get the answer like that. This man wrote a book on it. And
right.
it's an amazing difference to see what was done at the turn of the century, the previous century, and what can be done now. So 40 years
Sure.
of your life compared to $150. That tells you the power of Embark.
Yes, that truly does. Pseudo Petrus says, I'm doing experimental breeding. I want to fix a recessive trait. I know that the F1 generation might not give me the result I want, but with some luck, the F2 generation will give me a start.
Is that the question?
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Pseudo. I hope you're using Embark or, obviously genetic testing. Obviously, you're saying you're trying to fix a recessive trait. I'm thinking that you're genetically testing. If you are genetically testing, then you will know the likelihood, or at least have an idea of what the likelihoods are of you being able to breed out. I only say that because the word luck kind of throws me off a little bit. Luck to me is almost as if though you're not making an educated guess, but based on what you're saying, wanting to fix a recessive trait, I want to guess that you are, man. Let's see. We have Inserata says, gonna have to watch later. I'm taking 2 females for photos. Somebody's doing a photo shoot. Okay, good deal. Let's switch gears here a little bit, Alex. Let me ask you on your breed, right?
Right. German Shepherd.
And I'll try and answer and also speak on my breed. Are there some dominant traits and recessive traits that you've been able to identify without Embark? I'm talking about when it comes to breeding. Let me give you an example. In American Bullies, right? A dog that has a small head tends to be a dominant trait. So if you have a bully with a really big head and it's being bred to another that has a small head, more likely than not, that litter is going to be dominated by small heads. Is there anything like that going on with your particular breed?
Well, the answer is yes, but remember, the breed is not one breed anymore. It's 5 subbreeds. You have the West German show line, the American show line, the Czech working line, the East German working line, and the West German working line. So it's not one breed or one gene pool anymore. It's 5 subbreeds. So you have to understand that you're dealing with not the breed as a whole, but a specific gene pool within the breed now. A recessive trait in German Shepherds, which without even doing Embark, is black color. Black
Okay.
in German Shepherds is recessive. So to get black, you have to either breed 2 black dogs to each other because they're both black, or breed one dog which carries black because its mother was black or its father was black. Let's say, take my dog Bailey, for example. She's sable, but her father is black. When bred to an all black dog, which was Jago, he can only give black because he is black. So he gives the recessive color of black. But remember, if black was dominant, for those who don't follow what I'm saying, if black was dominant, only one parent being black would give black. That's sufficient because it's dominant.
Correct.
But recessive, you need it from both sides. Okay. So when she was bred to an all black dog, in this case Jago, but her father is black and her grandfather is black, 3/4 of the litter was black, 1/4 of the litter was sable. When she was bred to my dog Jake, who passed away, I think I told you that.
Yeah.
Black was his father and grandfather, but he himself was not black. But she also is not black. She was sable, but her father was black. So the black from her father and the black from his father met up, and one puppy out of 12 was black. To increase the odds of having black puppies, let's say that was, I'm not breeding by color, by the way, but let's
Right.
say I was, and I have a sable female. If she's sable from both parents, she's homozygous sable. But she's sable from one parent and the other parent is black, she's heterozygous sable, meaning
Mhm.
she's expressing sable but carries black as a recessive. So by breeding a sable bitch with a black recessive to an all black dog, which can only pass black, in that situation, 3/4 of the litter is black. So there are some traits in color, and again, that's a monogenetic trait. So to be clear, we're discussing in the Hardy-Weinberg equation monogenetic traits. In the case of coat color, that's a monogenetic trait. Eye color, well, eye color in human beings is it's almost monogenetic, but it's been modified. But you could predict eye color, blue color, or green or brown eyes, but not quite. So I would say it's almost a monogenetic trait.
Mm.
So there are some traits which are definitely monogenetic and can be predicted without you using embark. A trait, for example, which is clearly predictable without even doing genetic testing is the liver. Liver is a color dilution gene of the black gene. Now, I would never breed a liver to a liver because I would not even breed a single liver because it's so undesirable in the German Shepherd that
Mm.
if that puppy came out liver, I would sell it very cheap and without breeding rights, and I would move on. So you don't want to breed two recessive together, which you know the outcome will be recessive. Or you would never breed a mutation together, like panda. Panda or piebald panda, as it's called, is a mutation. Now, if you remember the equation, 10 to the negative eighth power is in a 10 to the negative sixth is a millionth. 10 to the negative seventh is 10 million. 10 to the negative eighth is 100.
100.
10 to
Right.
the negative ninth is a billion. So 10 to the negative eighth is a very small number right now. So it's 100 millionth chance of getting a mutation. 100 millionth chance. That's a very, very small chance. So piebald panda was such a mutation. Now,
Mhm.
some people are breeding that color because they command more market money for that color because it's
Right.
so rare. Now, because they want to increase their price per puppy, let's say from 3,000 to 6,000 per puppy, they're breeding this color mutation. Now, are they doing the right thing? No, because they're not following the breed standard. You breed out mutations. You don't increase the allelic frequency of mutations.
Bringing them in.
But but people who are breeding for money because this color is unusual and they
Right.
could charge more money, they will breed mutations. So the point of all these equations, um, it's a scientific approach to breeding, which Raul and I both agree with. The point of all these equations is to get rid of mutations, get rid of negative traits, not to increase them because they give you a higher market share. For example, black German Shepherds command are only 10% of the total gene pool in the German Shepherd, right? Now, I could ask for more money for a black puppy, right? Because it's so rare, but I don't. To me, it's just a puppy, like any other puppy, and I charge the same. Now, some people who want to breed by color charge more. Another example you should never breed in the German Shepherd is Brindle. The third son of Howard von Graffeth, the first German Shepherd in 1899, when the breed was created, was called Pilot. Pilot was Brindle. Now, for those who don't know, the Dutch Shepherd is Brindle.
Mm.
Brindle is a dominant trait. So the way you breed Dutch Shepherds is to breed Belgian Malinois, which are brindle. You call them Dutch Shepherds because so much Malinois blood was infused into the Dutch Shepherd because the breed was almost died out after World War II. Now, one of the progenitors of the Dutch Shepherd may have been Pilot, the son of Howard von Graffel, who was brindle. So um, Captain Max von Stefanitz ruled that you should no longer breed brindle. He sold that dog to the Netherlands, and I think the Dutch Shepherd comes from that dog. or partially influenced by that dog. Another example is color of the eyes. Because yellow eyes are from the wolf, he specifically said no German Shepherd shall have yellow eyes, only brown eyes, because he didn't want to encourage people thinking
You could
the
breed a
German
wolf
Shepherd
of a wolf dog.
is a wolf dog, right? Now, so a wolf mix, a recent wolf mix, like a Czech wolf dog, or I don't encourage people to mix dogs with wolves. I think it's a terrible idea. But what I'm saying is he specifically mandated no German Shepherd shall have yellow eyes. No German Shepherd should have blue eyes. Now the Husky has blue eyes. If I
Right.
see a German Shepherd with blue eyes, I immediately know it's not a pure breed.
Mm.
I immediately know it's a Husky cross.
It's outside of the standard. Real
Right.
quick, Alex, let me address Maurice Humboldt. He's asking, how's Azu doing? Azu is an 8-year-old female I have that recently was diagnosed with cancer. Right now, she's doing well. We've taken it upon ourselves. You know, we feed daily. We feed raw garlic. Right now, we're also feeding raw mushrooms to her, and also bitter melon, which has anti-cancer properties. We're gonna treat this whole thing naturally until the day she can't go no more. At which time, unfortunately, we'll have to put her down. But up to now, to be quite honest with you, she's doing just fine. She's running. She's having. She seems to be feeling pretty well. Alex, you know, you're in a very you're in a very unique position where you know a lot about these genetic terms, and you're able to calculate a lot of these things in your head. So I think what's awesome is you are in an established breed such as the German Shepherd that has been established for over 100 years now. Um, and I'm with the American Bully that's been around for 30 some odd years. It's still considered by many to be a new breed. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Looking from the outside in, looking at us, right? From the German Shepherd world, looking at us. You know, the American Bully has different classes. We have the pockets, we have the standard and classic, and then at the biggest that we have is the XL. My question to you is, if you were breeding American Bullies, if all of a sudden today I could clone you and put you somewhere, and you have no German Shepherds, right? And you're forced to breed American Bullies. What would your approach be as far as breed? Would you be looking to breed dogs with higher coys? How would you set up your breeding program? Say you have, let's, for the sake of argument, let's say you have enough room for a total of 6 dogs.
6.
Give me an idea of what your approach would be. How would you go about it?
Okay. You gives me a very hard problem to solve, but I'll give you the best answer I know how. And if I'm
Okay.
not right, I don't claim to be a geneticist, and I don't claim to be anybody special.
No, not at all. But I'm
Yeah.
sure people want to know what your approach would be.
Well, the first approach in breeding any breed, let's say is starting off a new breed from scratch, as an example. You want to breed dogs of similar phenotype because that will converge the characteristics fastest. For example, what do I mean by that? Let's say I have a herding breed like the German Shepherd, and have another herding breed, the Dutch Shepherd, and I have another herding breed, which is the Belgian Malinois, right? 3 herding breeds. And in the 19th century, they were very closely related. They're now very separate breeds, but in the beginning, they were very closely related. Because the head shape and muzzle shape and ear shape and overall size, structure, and overall appearance is similar across these 3 herding breeds, if I was to breed a Dutch Shepherd with a German Shepherd, it wouldn't take me too long to create a new breed because they're already phenotypically similar.
Correct.
Same thing with the American Bulldog and the British Bulldog. They are not similar now, but because they originate from the 19th century from the bull baiting dog of that time, it's quicker to converge a breed which is already phenotypically similar. In other words, or if I was to breed a Mastiff with a Bulldog, we have a Bull Mastiff, that's an example of that. But in other words, if dogs are of similar phenotype, they converge to a common phenotypical standard faster. So if I breed a German Shepherd with a Pitbull, now these are two different phenotypes. Big blocky head, very muscular, very different physical appearance, right? So now I have a herding breed and I have a Mastiff type breed or a Bulldog type breed. And there would be very hard to converge their characteristics to become a single breed, because
Mhm.
either the puppies will come out more German Shepherd like, or they would come out more Bulldog, Pitbull type. And it would take a longer time to merge their characteristics because they started off as very different phenotypes, right? So you see what I'm saying? When you're breeding two breed, when you're creating a breed, you're creating for using an existing breed.
Mhm.
So when the two breeds involved are phenotypically similar, their characteristics converge faster. If they're two phenotypically wide apart, they
Right. It's going to
converge
take longer.
more. It can take more time. So that's the first thing you must understand is when you're breeding a breed, you want to start off with dogs with a similar phenotype. That's the first step of any creating of any breed. The next step of how to create a breed is you have to create a written standard of what the breed is like. What do you want the breed to look like at the end stage? Not experiment as you go. You got to write out what you have to have a vision of what you
Mhm.
want the end result to look like. Now, let's take a fairly recent breed, which is about the same age as the German Shepherd, which is the Doberman Pinscher.
Okay.
For those who don't know, it was created from 5 breeds. Oh, why? Because there was a need for that breed. Back then, taxes were not taken out of your W-2 pay stub automatically by the government. Back then, you got your full pay, and a tax collector would knock on your door and collect taxes from you. There was not automatic withdrawal of taxes. So Louis
Okay.
Doberman drove to people's houses to collect taxes on horseback. People attacked him and beat him up, and he was attacked brutally and almost lost his life. One of the professions he also had was he ran a dog animal shelter, and he had a lot of access to a lot of dogs. So the first thing he knew was he needed a dog which could keep up with a horse. So he knew that he needed a breed that could keep up with a horse. As he went around the town collecting taxes, he was on horseback. So he needed a breed that could keep up with a horse. So one of the breeds which he used was the greyhound because it could keep up with a horse. He also needed a dog which had an intimidating look and had built-in natural aggression. So he used the Rottweiler. That was another breed he used. Another
Wow.
breed he used was the French Besseron, and he used the miniature pincher. Now, so the second answer of how to create a breed is to define the purpose for the breed. So he wanted a dog that could keep up with a horse and had enough built-in aggression to take on an opponent and not give up the fight. So when he created the Doberman Pinscher, he had a specific purpose in mind. He wanted a bodyguard dog that could keep up with a horse because he was on horseback. So to answer your question, the second thing you would define is what is the purpose of the breed? Now, that's a difficult thing in today's society because today dogs are just pets. They're no longer used for guarding a person against an attack, like was the
Okay.
case with Louis Doberman. So the first thing I would do is I would define what is my criteria that the dog must meet to become a breed. So in other words, if I was breeding a dog for fighting, I would breed a dog with a lot of gameness, a dog with a lot of fight
Okay.
drive. If I was breeding a dog which was a good retriever, I would breed a dog which has a lot of retrieving instinct.
How about a dog that is for companion breed, like the American
Well,
Bully?
well, okay. So to answer your question, to breed a dog, you have to figure out what is breed worthy and what is non breed worthy.
Mhm.
All dogs are lovable and sweet. So the question is, well, is that worth breeding? If you go to the German Shepherd, as I explained last time, you have a sport called Schutzhund, tracking, obedience, and protection, which defines which dogs are bred or not bred. So yes, German Shepherds can be family members and sweet, and in fact, 95% or more of all German Shepherds are bought for companionship and not for protection. So 95 to 98% of German Shepherds are sold to families and not used for protection.
Correct.
So to define a dog as only being a companion, it's not enough of a definition by which to create a breed, because you have to have some way to fail dogs not to be bred.
Well,
So
let me
you would need to create a criteria, but then
let me ask you.
yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me just ask you this. One of the things, for example, that I can tell you is not desired is high prey drive in our breed.
Right.
Because we're dealing with a companion breed. We want a dog that is able to look at us for instruction and not necessarily because of instinct react to an outside stimulus.
Right. Well, let me speak on that. I think that today, again, I'm going to go back to what I know. Today's German Shepherd versus today's Belgian Malinois, which is competing in the Schützen trials quite well and is replacing the German Shepherd to a large extent in the military and police work. They're breeding German Shepherds more and more like Malinois. I've seen a Malinois at my club where the trainer just got up from the chair and his own dog attacked him because he moved too quick, because they're breeding them with OCD. They're basically they're breeding them to be compulsive. There's a compulsive disorder that they have, in my opinion. Now, when you breed German Shepherds more and more like Malinois, you're getting away from what the German Shepherd does have prey drive. And in fact, there's a high degree of prey drive, but they don't have the same degree of prey drive as a Malinois. So prey drive is a scale. It's not no prey drive or high prey drive. It's a scale.
Okay.
Now, prey drive, in my opinion, is desirable because it can be used for training. You can use a toy as a reward object for training. Prey drive is in the golden retriever. It's not an aggressive breed, but the golden retriever has a lot of prey drive. You need it in order to retrieve. You need prey drive. You need hunt drive to relentlessly search for a toy in the face of adversity. So prey drive is a spectrum. It's not like 0 or 100. It's 0, 80, 90, 70. It's a spectrum.
Okay.
So I would not breed out prey drive. I think it's a desirable drive. I would not breed high prey drive, but I would not look to breed no prey drive. I don't think that's not what I would do.
What would be the consequence? What do you think would be the consequence of a dog with very little or zero, as close to zero prey drive as there could be? What would be the consequence?
There's a lot of breeds like that which have very, very little prey drive or almost no prey drive. These dogs are placid. They're couch potatoes. They are very they're good dogs if you want a companion, but they're extremely hard to motivate for obedience. Not just protection, obedience, because at some point by 12 months of age, you extinguish food drive. The dog will no longer work for food. And then in the German Shepherd, you've been training with a toy all the time. You got your reps in through food. You do a high number of reps with food, but you cannot do a high number of reps with a toy, right? Dog will get winded. So once the dog reaches 12 months and you've exhausted its food drive, you have no other tool in the tool chest by which to train. So a certain amount of prey drive helps you in training. So now to answer your question, is a dog which has no prey drive whatsoever?
Yes.
I don't like dogs with no prey drive. I like dogs with prey drive.
Let me ask you this: a dog with no prey drive, and this is very hypothetical, but I just want to hear what your response is.
Right.
A dog with no prey drive, would it still have the capability of defending you if he sees a perceived threat?
It would, but people have to understand. So there are 3 drives involved in protection. People have to understand that. And pit bulls have no defense drive, but they have prey drive. It's not the prey drive that causes the problem. It's defense drive. Let me explain.
Yes.
Back in the 1960s, there was a dog called the East German Shepherd, the DDR German Shepherd, Deutsche Democratic Republic. And people would often ask me, what is the difference between a West German working line German Shepherd? We're not talking about show lines now. We're talking about working lines only. Okay. What is the difference between a working line German Shepherd and an East German Shepherd? and its close derivative, the Czech German Shepherd, because the Czech German Shepherd derived from the East German Shepherd when the Berlin Wall fell down in 1989 and the
Correct.
Soviet Union fell apart in 1991. All the East German dogs went to Czech Republic and became the Czech German Shepherds, or their genetic heavily influenced the Czech German Shepherd. Now, so to answer your question, the DDR German Shepherd as it existed, I don't believe it still exists. Some people claim they have it, but that's a marketing gimmick, in my opinion. But that's besides the point. Now, the East German Shepherd was 80% defense, 20% prey. The West German Shepherd is the exact flip of that. It's 90% prey, 10% defense. The Belgian Malinois is all prey, no defense. But there's something called prey drive aggression. Now, when you're training a sport dog versus a personal protection dog, that's a very key component. Personal protection dogs and sport dogs are not the same. What is the difference? A sport dog is trained to bite the bite sleeve, but not the man wearing the equipment. He's equipment focused because it's a trial and it's a sport. A personal protection dog is focused on aggressively protecting you in a real life encounter with a criminal, but it's not a sport dog. Now, to train for sport, the dog is first progressed from a puppy tug to a bite pillow, then to a soft sleeve, and then to a hard sleeve. It's a progression. When you're training a dog is a sport dog, you're not going to threaten it. You're not going to tie it up and say, I'm going to beat you, or, So you have fight or flight. There's
Okay.
three options: fight, flight, or freeze. A dog can either freeze because it's afraid to be hit and doesn't know what to do. It freezes. You have fight, fight back, or flight, run away. But if you tie a dog up, the flight option is removed. I'm going to get a book. 1 second. I'm going to show this book. 1 second. I'll be right.
Okay. Let's give Alex a second. I find it very interesting to hear what his outlook of my breed is and what the possibilities are. I couldn't think of a better person. He's back. Let me bring him on. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead, Alex.
So guys, this is a book. I know you guys are not into German Shepherds, are into pit bulls and bullies and bully breeds, but this is a book you want to read, no matter the breed. Can you everybody see this book?
Yes.
It's a very skinny book. You see this book, how skinny this is?
Very
This
easy
is a
read.
book, very easy read. It's written by
Yes.
Dr. Helmut Reiser, called Der Schutzhund, the protection dog, the training of working dogs in protection. And this is a book written in 1996. And the reason I bring up this book is extremely relevant even today, even though 1996 was a long time ago. Why? Because prior to this book being written, the way you train a protection dog was you tied him up so he couldn't escape. So flight was removed as an option.
Okay.
And you would hit him and hit him and hit him. And you would stick hit a dog until you got him so aggressive that he fights back, because either he's going to fight back or he's going to bleed. And that's how dogs were trained in defense up until 1996. As he writes this book, this barbaric method of training was removed, and he describes a better way of training protection. And that way is you teach in prey first, not in defense first, where the dog is taught the mechanics of fighting against a prey object, which is a puppy tug and eventually a bite sleeve. The dog is taught the mechanics of biting without pressure on the dog. There's no threat to the dog. And the dog is taught to grip with a full grip, or the back teeth grip, not the front teeth. Because when the dog bites with the front teeth, that's a fear-based bite. The dog wants to take a cheap bite and get out. When your dog bites with the full teeth, with the back of the mouth, that's I'm in charge bite. I'm going to get you. I'm fighting you. When the dog bites with the front teeth, it's like a cheap shot. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So you're teaching the dog to bite with a full grip, and then the helper pretends to be afraid and runs away with the toy.
Right.
And the dog barks to get the toy, and you're building the dog's confidence up. Eventually, the dog knows the helper steals the prey. I'm not afraid of the helper. I can engage the helper. The helper is wearing an apron, so the dog's nails will not scratch his legs. And then the dog is taught the mechanics of fighting with an opponent to win the sleeve. By the time the dog reaches 18 months, now the dog has been built up in confidence and mechanics of fighting. Now you switch it up on the dog. Now you're going to say, oh, really? Now it's not a game, boy. Now we're going to fight for real. And now you're putting defense into the dog. The dog thinks that if I don't fight this guy, I'm going to get hit or a stick hit. But now the dog has enough confidence in himself. He's grown, he's mature, and he now can take the opponent. So there's prey drive, the desire to win the sleeve. There's the defense drive, the ability to defend yourself. And then there's fight drive, where the dog is teeter-tottering between fight and defense. He's moving through defense and relieving the pressure of defense through prey. And that's called fight drive. The desire to win against an opponent is called fight drive. Now, the way you train a German Shepherd, I've trained German Shepherds and I've trained Neapolitan Mastiff in my club. And I also trained another Mastiff, which was a King Corso Mastiff. The gladiator breeds, which are like the big Roman-derived breeds,
Yes.
they fight differently than German Shepherds. So I've trained herding dogs, I've trained herders, Malinois and Shepherds, and I've trained gladiator breeds. A Rottweiler is actually more like a gladiator breed than a herding breed. They are trained more similarly to the gladiator breed.
Would the gladiator breed fall under the Molosser?
That's right. The Molosser breeds are the gladiator breeds. Right. These are derived from the Roman Molosser dogs. Now, the herding dog is in it for the prey. He wants to control the prey, and and grip is genetic in German Shepherds, because he has to bite the leg of the sheep in order to hold on to it to make it move, and make it move with the herd. So he's in it for the prey. That's why it's called the escape bite. You see the helper running away from the dog, and he catches the dog on the sleeve because the dog is running against a person running away from it. That's in prey drive. He's running. He's not threatened by that man. He's running away from him, right? So that's in prey. Now, the Molosser breeds, they fight for the joy of the fight. They fight to win the man. I'm like, oh, really? Really? Come on. Let's go. Let's go. Let's see what you got. So the Molosser breeds, once you build their confidence of how to bite in prey, they don't have much prey. Like Neapolitan Mastiff or the King Corso really doesn't have a lot of prey. They have a lot of defense, but they don't have a lot of prey. So you got to get them angry to make them fight. But once they're angry, they fight. It's game over. They fight serious because, first of all, they have a lot more muscle mass. They're 120 to 140 pounds, as opposed to a German Shepherd, which is 80 to 90 pounds, or a Malinois, which is only 65 pounds. So a Malinois bites out of momentum. Because it launches into the bite, its speed carries the force. But itself, it's a light dog, only 65 pounds. So the way it takes a man down is its sheer speed, grabbing the sleeve, throws the man to the ground because the speed carries the man. On the other hand, a Molosser breed, a gladiator breed, has enough man-stopping power to take down the opponent, but it fights in defense and aggression. It fights in fight drive and defense. It doesn't fight in prey. So now, the way you train a Molosser type breed is you make it angry. You go pre-methods of 1996.
Wow, hit him with a stick.
You hit him and make him angry. Now, that sounds cruel. But if you need that kind of protection because you're facing a serious threat of your life and limb and death, and you really need a personal protection dog, first of all, anybody attacking a man having a 120-pound dog next to him is already a pretty seriously deranged individual.
Yes.
Somebody walking with a 90-pound German Shepherd next to them, and they still choose to attack you, they're either on PCP, on drugs, or they have a real serious problem. If you have a 120-pound Molosser type breed, a Neapolitan Mastiff, an English Mastiff, and they still choose to attack you, they're freaking mentally, they're asking for it. Now, so to answer your question, Defense has nothing to do with prey drive. Prey drive is the need to chase. Now, the need to chase can be converted to the need to bite at bite toy. So you're transferring chasing a prey object to chasing a tug as a
Right.
prey object. In other words, you're transferring that drive. It's not aggression drive. It's purely to chase prey. Now, you train a dog in prey, and then you transition to defense when it's mentally and physically mature. Now, for a sport dog, you never have to transition to defense because it doesn't matter why he bites. You're out for points. You're not out for real life encounter because in the sport there are rules.
Right.
But in real life encounter, there are no rules. You're fighting for life and death. So you will never transition a sport dog into defense, although you could, because you don't need to. You're just out to score points. Now, in personal protection, now I'll give you an example. I had a dog named Andrew. His father was Sejelan Handorfu from the Czech Border Patrol dogs, which were very aggressive dogs. And his mother was Seti van Leerburg of the Leerburg Kennel. I'm sure you heard of them. Now, the father influenced this dog. I got this dog as a puppy, 7 months old, and I trained him and I socialized the hell out of him. And now he was a very suspicious dog, always looking around. Everybody was a potential threat as far as he was concerned. He did not aggress, but he always walked around with a chip on his shoulder. Always walked around thinking, who is next? You're on my turf. Very tough dog, very aggressive dog. And the problem with breeding very strong defense drive is that defense drive can become one of two things. It can become defense drive, which is fear-based aggression, where you're breeding a fear biter. It's defensive drive, but so there's drive and there's drive thresholds. So let me explain. I could have a dog with high defense drive, but high thresholds. So he's very strong in himself. Take, for example, a boxer like Muhammad Ali, right? When he was alive, right? He's a strong man. He knows he's a strong man. It takes a lot to provoke him before he'll hit you outside the ring, right? Or you take somebody like Mike Tyson. He's a very strong man.
Don't bring up Mike Tyson. I
All
just
right.
can't believe what happened Friday, man. I'm still hurting.
Yeah, I know, but he's almost 60. What do you expect?
I know.
Yeah, he's almost. But the point is, as an individual in everyday life, he was the top boxer in the world, and even at age 60, he did pretty good for his age. Right now, what I'm saying is, in everyday life, he knows he's strong. Somebody, let's say, lifts weights, right?
Yeah.
Very strong build. Now, no person rubbing and pushing his shoulder, walking past him, will really upset him because he could take that eye and snap his neck, and it would be not too hard, right? So he's a naturally self-confident individual that it takes a lot to make him go into aggression mode, right? Now, somebody who has a weak ego and is insecure and has a Napoleon complex,
Yes.
it doesn't take much to trigger them. If you remember the movie with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, there was he was playing a character which had a chip on his shoulder, the smallest thing, and he would be arguing with you, and because he had a gun, he would shoot you. In other words, the Joe Pesci character was like, what? Am I making you funny? Am I making you laugh? Am I a clown to you?
Yeah, it took very little to get
very
him.
little to provoke him, right? Now that's low thresholds. So you have a dog which is high defense, high power, but high thresholds. Or you have a dog with a lot of power, but very low thresholds. Now, when you're breeding a dog with high defense, you have to also breed for good nerves, high thresholds. Now, high and clear in the head. Now, that's a very hard, that sounds simple, right? But it's not simple. I'll give you an example of good nerves versus bad nerves. My dog, Jake, may God rest his soul, when I was working with my friend Mike, who's a trainer in Brooklyn, I took my daughter. For some reason, my wife had to be doing something, shopping. I don't remember, but she was 3 years old and she came with me. And we had an open field, and Mike is like running at a distance, like provoking the dog. Come on. And he's like teasing the dog. He's wearing a sleeve on his left arm, and he's like threatening the dog. Right now, My daughter sees Jake, who she sees as a pet in the house, pulls him on the tail as he's about, and he's barking like, I'm going to get you, because I'm holding him back to rile him up, to fire the dog up, to
Right.
go for the sleeve. Right now, she pulls on the tail. My heart sank to my elbows because I thought she would lose her face, because he could have disfigured her, right? Because he's riled up. Instead, he turns around, licks her face, turns around and launches into Mike like nothing happened.
Wow.
That's a
So he
dog.
was very much aware of his
He was a dog which
surroundings,
was
even
clear-headed,
yeah.
clear-headed. Now I see dogs right now being bred now. Depends on the line. I'm not going to mention some lines, but there are some lines which are known for this, where there was a case with a police officer where he was holding him back to go against the suspect. They didn't give the release command for the dog to be released against the suspect. The dog is so amped up for the bite, he turns around and nails his own handler and
Wow.
bites him and makes him bleed. You can see the blood on the officer.
Right.
He's a strong man, so he holds the dog on the what do you call this thing? The harness. Grabs him by the harness good and puts him back in the truck. But the dog was so amped up for the bite, he bites his own handler out of frustration of not getting the bite against the opponent. And I've seen this mostly in Malinois. I haven't seen this in German Shepherds, but it's coming soon. I promise you. As they're breeding them more like Malinois, we're going to see
Right.
the same characteristics soon. Now, so what am I explaining? There's a difference between the fence drive and low thresholds versus high thresholds. Also, a dog which is not having enough self-control. The dog which is impulse driven to satisfy its impulse. In other words, the Malinois works for itself. It works to satisfy its prey drive. The
Alex, do
German
me a
Shepherd
favor.
works for you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Go ahead and move the mic a little bit away from your
Oh,
face.
how about
There
that?
you go.
Better? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna get a quick drink of water because my mouth is dry. I'm sorry. Well, I'll be.
Go for it. I love hearing Alex going into the whole training bit. We have Jose and Derry saying, does sex of the dog matter when it comes to the ability of protection, male versus female? And Adam Fields is saying loyalty and obedience overdrive. Yes, pretty much. I mean, I've seen scenarios in the past where when a dog gets riled up and they move forward with an attack, whether it's defense or prey driven, I've seen it where the dog pretty much blacks out. I mean, how many times do we not see an internet video where when two dogs, for example, get in a fight, no matter what, you can't, you can't break it apart. It's almost a lot of times the only way to break it apart is by choking, one or both out for a little bit of time, and then breaking it apart. I definitely want to ask him on that. What makes the dog pretty much lose it? In other words, go into the red zone and forget about its surroundings. He's right back. Let me go ahead and bring him on, and let's go ahead and ask him that. Alex,
Sorry,
I have a
guys. I had to
question.
get a little water. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I have a question for you. So I've seen on the internet. Go ahead and move your mic up again. I'm sorry. There you go.
How's that? Better?
It's better there. Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen on the internet a lot of times when dogs attack, say, other dogs, is nearly impossible to break them up, right? And what is often referred to as the dog going into the red zone, which pretty much means the dog, once
Lost control.
he loses control. Can you explain to me what gets them there in the red zone? Does it have to do with the way they were bred and what type of drives they have?
The answer is that we now have genetic markers, as I'm sure you know, and dog on dog aggression is different than dog on animal aggression.
Okay.
So the Pitbull, the name pit means they were fighting in a pit. and bull because it was a bull terrier. They would take down bulls by taking the loose neck skin, grabbing onto it, and
Right.
hanging on and taking more and more tissue of the neck until you choke up the bull's ability to breathe. And that's why they were called bull baiting dogs. Now, because the owner had to work closely with the dog in a dog fight, they
Right.
were bred to be very sweet to people, but very aggressive to other dogs. The same thing is true of game cocks. You see chicken cocks which will fight to the death, even as little chicklets. They're babies, and they already see
Right.
another male chicklet, and they already want to fight. So dog-to-dog aggression, or in the case of cocks, rooster-to-rooster aggression, it's genetic. Now, people will say to me, no, you're wrong. It's all in how you raise them. You don't know what you're talking about. You give the dog which has not been abused, and you raise it right, and it'll be fine. These people don't understand how much genetics has a strong influence on the
Genetic
dog's history.
component. Yeah.
The genetic component of dogs is part of their DNA. It's part of their legacy. You simply can't say you can completely get rid of it. The answer is you can't. And
Right.
it's not prey drive. So to answer your question, to go back to your original question, what would I do to breed a dog? It's not prey drive which is the problem,
Okay.
and it's not aggression which is the problem. It is at the point of the trigger. At what point is there a high trigger or low trigger? So in the
Mm,
case of the pit bull, it has genetic dog-to-dog aggression wired in, but they also have a low trigger for that aggression.
okay.
Whereas a mastiff breed, which wasn't bred to fight other dogs, but was bred to fight people, because remember when armies engaged in the past, it wasn't with. Remember, World War I was the first mechanized war. You had tanks and submarines and airplanes and poison gas in World War I. Prior to World War I, you had cavalry engaging cavalry on a horse.
Right.
And so if you could stay on the horse and something could help you stay on that horse, where you could use your saber against the other guy, which is not on the horse, that kept you alive. So the big Molosser type breeds, the big Mastiff breed, the Tibetan Mastiff comes to mind as an example. The Alabaster Mastiff comes to mind. They were big dogs, almost the size of the horse. So and they had metal spike collars on them. If they could attack the other
Right.
people and keep you on your horse, you had a chance to survive because you were not using a gun. You were using a saber and your ability to physically fight. It was hand-on-hand combat. It wasn't at a distance firing a rocket and pushing a button like we have nowadays.
Right.
War was bloody and it was up close. So these war dogs, the Mastiffs, were bred to fight people, not other dogs. Now, but they also had a very high threshold. So it's not the pit bull is an aggressive breed. It's not an aggressive breed. It's a breed which has low thresholds. So it's not about breeding low prey drive. It's not the prey drive which is the problem. You can have a golden retriever. It has prey drive too. So does a lot of breeds have a lot of prey drive. For example, the Weimaraner, very high prey drive. The poodle, which derives from the French spaniel. It was originally a retriever breed. It also
Okay.
has high prey drive. So in other words, it's not the prey drive which is the problem, and it's not defense drive which is the problem. It's drive and drive thresholds which are the problem. So to breed a breed from scratch, like if I was to breed, I would need to create. Now, in the case of the American Bully, you do want to lower prey drive because some of the component animals of that breed were pit bulls,
Correct.
and they have a historical history of fighting other dogs. So would you want to reduce prey drive in your particular breed? The answer is yes. Would you want to eliminate it completely? The answer is no, because you have to have something you can train with.
Okay.
So prey drive is desirable for training. Now, is prey drive desirable for teaching protection? No. Protection has nothing to do with prey drive. Sport-based protection has to do with prey drive. Defense-based protection has nothing to do with prey drive. It has to do with defense drive and fight drive.
Correct.
So in order for a dog to protect you, it has to have a lot of defense drive, not prey drive. Prey drive is how you develop the mechanics of fighting an opponent And since you can't make a dog bite live flesh, the man has to wear protective equipment. So you're teaching the dog to target the protective equipment. Because you
Alex,
can't.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have a question that is American Bully based from
Okay.
Adam Fields. I think it's a very interesting question. He says, can you build a dog's threshold for drive with training and socialization?
The answer is partially. So training makes a dog more manageable. Okay. Training makes a dog much more manageable because you're teaching it a conditioned response. If you read Pavlov's, the dogs would salivate when they heard a bell doll ring. If you teach a dog a certain set of behaviors and a certain outcome, like you win the sleeve, the fight is over. That's it. You can teach a dog to get a conditioned response. But at the end of the day, the dog is who he is. So socializing helps. Teaching an outcome which is predictable every single time in a controlled way is desirable. So you can make the dog more livable. You can condition the dog's response. But at the end of the day, the dog is who he or she is. So thresholds are not a train response. Thresholds is a genetic response. So
Okay.
thresholds are not trainable. Thresholds are genetic. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
I was working. This is a clear example, clear as day. I was working. I work with a lot of people, and I train, and then I also have other trainers use me either as a decoy or as a assistant. We were working with a German Shepherd from very good lines, very good pedigree, who has never been exposed to children ever. The owner had no children, and he has never been around children, which, as strange as that sounds, that's true.
Wow.
We had the dog in a Platz near a Walmart. Platz is German for down, down command. And we were teaching him to be in a down for 15 minutes under distraction because in the trial, the dog is doing a down while the other dog does the obedience routine. And then they switch. The dog doing the
Okay.
obedience routine goes into the down, and the other dog does the obedience routine. The dog must maintain the down and not break the down stay, or you're going to be disqualified. And all your training for 2 years will go down the toilet. So the maintaining a down stay under distraction of a crowd of people around you and
Mhm.
another dog on the field and not breaking the down is critical, or you fail the trial. So we were teaching the dog under the most extreme distraction, which is next to a Walmart with a shopping center full of
Right.
cars and people,
Full
noise,
people, carts.
full of
Right.
people moving with shopping carts, not paying attention to what they're doing, just busy shopping. Now, that's an extreme training scenario for the dog not to break the down stay, right? Now, he was off leash because he would be in a trial. And the dog was at the point of his training where that could be done. In other words, this was not a beginning first class. The dog was far
Okay.
along in his training. All of a sudden, a child comes up, breaks from her mom's grip, about 5 years old. Dog is in a down. She comes up, she hugs the dog and then pulls on its ear. Now, this dog has never been socialized to children, ever. The owner was named Stanislav, a Polish guy I know. All right. I I thought this dog would bite. This was a bite trained dog. I thought this child would have its face ripped off and would have to have face replacement surgery. In other words, we thought we were going to get a lawsuit in our hands. We simply didn't expect the child to run up out of the blue and pull on the dog's ear. But
Wow.
nevertheless, that's what the child did. Parents have to have good control of their children. But this is what happened. I'm telling you a real story. Now,
Real scenario.
do you think this dog bit this child?
No, based
No.
on what you're saying, no, it didn't happen.
Right. It didn't happen. In fact, he licked her face.
Wow.
Now, he broke the downstay. So
I was gonna say,
I can
the kid either made your training or broke your training.
now the dog got up from the downstay. I forgive him for that.
That's
If
yeah.
somebody came over to me and pulled my ear, I would do the same thing. But so here's an example of good nerves and good genetics, but no training. This dog never had experience with children, never even saw children.
Right.
Now I blame that on the owner. He should have thought of that. He should have, he should have introduced the dog to children as a puppy because even if you don't have kids on your own, go to the grocery store or go to Home Depot and
Right. You're going to run into them.
you're going to run into children. It's just a fact of life. The guy didn't do that. Whatever. It's just, this is how it happened. I'm just telling you now. So here's an example of thresholds
Right.
versus drive. This was a high drive dog. If you're challenging him in protection phase and you're trying to whip him, which is stick hits are no longer allowed. I don't know if you know that. They remove
I
stick
wasn't
hits,
aware.
which removes the fight in the dog. Because how can you test the dog wants to give you a fight unless you challenge him, right? So even the rubber stick hits are now being removed because they're softening the sport. But for a
Okay.
long time, stick hits were allowed because in a real fight, the criminal will fight back. You want
Sure.
to see what the dog got if he's threatened. Not if, oh, the first time I hit it, it runs away and breaks, and breaks, right? You
Let
want
you
dog,
know immediately. Yeah.
yeah, you
Letting you
want to
know.
know the character of the dog, right? Now, here's a dog which had a lot of fight drive, had crazy prey drive. I mean, crazy prey drive. Okay. Now, he would jump over 3 cars to get his ball. That's how much prey drive he had.
Wow.
Now, so this is example, nothing to do with prey drive, nothing to do with aggression,
Just
everything to do with nothing to do with socialization, everything to do with nerves and drive thresholds. So now, if a dog is exhibiting weak nerves, back to the question that was asked, if a dog is exhibiting weak nerves, that's a dog which should never be protection trained. You don't train weak nerve dogs in protection because
right.
now that they know how to fight a man and have a good grip, because you taught it, now they're not afraid of a man anymore and they will engage because they've been told to engage is okay. So it's up to the people training protection to be responsible and never train a dog like that in protection. So the answer is, can you increase the dog's thresholds through training? No. You can only increase its ability to see a threat versus a non-threat through socialization,
Right.
through conditioning, but a dog like that should never be trained in the first place in protection. So does that answer your question, what a threshold is versus what drives is?
Yeah.
Drives
We
and thresholds are two different things.
we have a question here from Malachi. He's saying, have any of you guys ever had to let a dog go because of behavioral issues?
What
Have you
kind of
ever had
behavior?
to let go of a dog or put him down because of behavioral issues?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what it was and can you tell us why there wasn't a solution?
There was a dog named Thor, which was a very high drive dog. Um, and he was from a good pedigree. Uh, but he would bite his handler if he felt he got unfair correction. He's a very dominant dog.
Mm,
And if he felt he got a fair correction, he was fine. But if he felt he got an unfair correction, he would bite the left hand, which is where you're teaching, and the dog would bite hard, and he could break and crush bone. That's how powerful he was. And we tried to rehabilitate this dog by conditioning him to. He was already socialized. He went to different places, different people, and
right.
under non-threatening situations, he appeared fine. But you have to be able to correct the dog in case you think a dog is going to go into a fight or he's about to aggress against another person. Whether it's fair or unfair, he doesn't get to make the decision. You do. You're in a
Right.
leadership position over that dog. He's not. Now, if you cannot exercise a leadership position and nobody else can, and the dog can maul somebody or hurt somebody very badly,
Correct.
you don't let the dog live because he will. People have to understand that if you breed a dog, I had a chance to breed my dog Bailey to a male, very good pedigree, but he was extremely dog on dog aggressive and was very hard to control. You will, it's extremely hard to breed out aggression against people. Extremely hard. It'll take you 10 generations to breed out a super aggressive dog, which is why I don't. Now, some people will disagree with me. Some people will say you need to breed extreme dogs to get average dogs because the average is what's passed. So you need to breed extreme to extreme to get a good higher average. That's their breeding philosophy. I don't agree with that. I think that aggression is so difficult to overcome as a trait. I just don't breed it. So now, what do I mean by aggression? A certain amount of aggression in the German Shepherd is appropriate. It's not a lamb, it's a wolf. In other words, you're not teaching the dog to be a poodle. It is a protection breed. So, but what I mean is controlled aggression under your direction, and not aggression for its own sake. Aggression which is warranted by the circumstances or through training for points. Now, there are some people on the internet. I had a person call me. They watched a bunch of videos. Mans, some kind of guy with that name or something like that name, was saying that to teach a dog in defense first and teach dog to be very civil. And civil, what does civil mean? Because people say my dog is very civil. What it means is that if I'm in uniform, I'm in my civilian uniform. In other words, I am, if I'm a postal worker, right? I wear my postal uniform, I'm in my civic clothes. Or if I'm a police officer, I'm in my civic clothes. In other words, my work uniform is my civil, okay? If I'm out of uniform, I'm out of civil, okay? That's the word civil, how it's used. Now, if a dog is biting a man without equipment, or a bite suit is civil. In other words, it's biting the man without the uniform.
Right.
That's how the word civil is used. In other words, now, I don't agree with breeding very civil dogs. My dog Andrew, the one I told you about in 2001, I had him. He was a liability. I had to pay a $25,000. I was sued. I had a $25,000 lawsuit because he bit somebody thinking it's a threat. It was a non-threat, but he thought it was a threat because he was always like looking for a problem because he was so high defense drive. Now he was not weak-nerved. He did not buy out of fear. He fought thinking that he's doing the right thing. So a dog like that is very hard to control and live with because you're constantly afraid what he will do next. And I know my home insurance policy paid the $25,000 lawsuit, and then I had to pay another $25,000 because I was in a lawsuit. Now this was 23 years ago. So I talk about it now emotionally because it was 23 years ago. But the judge gave me an order either to rehome this dog or he was going to put him down with a needle. And a sheriff would come and kill this dog by force. So rather than having him killed, I rehomed him with a friend of mine who trains dogs for jails where there are criminals. And a dog like that would have been okay as a dog in a jailhouse. He specialized in dogs which are bred for jail work.
Wow.
Now, that saved the dog's life, but I was only 3 days away from having him put down with a needle.
Jeez.
So to answer your question, did I ever have to put a dog down? Thor had to be put down because I'm an experienced handler and I work with also experienced handlers, and the dog couldn't be controlled and you couldn't give him to anybody else because then you have a liability on that person.
Yes.
He's going to be hurt. Or if that person has children and you have a real liability, you have no conscience if you allow a dog.
He was a loaded gun.
It was a loaded gun, and he had to be. Now it was a beautiful dog, had a lot of training, but it was just a dog which thought he was the boss, and not how dare you boss him. And very dominant, very, very. He had high thresholds, but if he chose to bite, he's biting for real. He's coming for you. He's not taking a cheap bite. He's taking a powerful bite.
He's gonna kill you.
Break. He could kill you literally. Now, so Thor had to be put down. Andrew, the other dog with high defense drive, also from East German lines, by the way. Everybody wants. I want DDR dogs. I want DDR dogs. No, you don't. Those dogs were bred to patrol a wall between East and West Germany, and everybody escaping from communist East Germany into Western Germany.
Yeah.
They were sent to kill them. Kill them.
Yes.
So you don't want dogs from those lines. People, oh, I want the old DDR dogs. No, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't know what you're talking about. You have some fantasy idea in your mind that I want a civil dog because they read a bunch of YouTube videos and a bunch of articles, and they want a dog which is real. I want a real dog, which will bite for real with a man not wearing equipment. No, you don't.
Right.
You're gonna get sued for 50
Liability.
large.
Yeah.
And if you can handle 50 large, then you better be prepared to handle 50 large. And I'm not kidding.
Well, that was 50 large 23 years ago. I'm with inflation and everything else. You're talking about 150 right about now.
Yeah. So the bottom line is the second dog, I saved his life by giving him to a friend. His name is Pat, which then put him in the Yonkers Police Department to patrol the jails. He retrained him. He was a very good trainer, above my skill level. And the other dog, Thor, had to be put down.
We
Look,
have
it's not a pleasant situation to be in that situation. But what I'm saying to
No.
you guys is, if you're talking about personal protection dogs, understand this. First of all, the rules that apply to a police dog don't apply to a personal protection dog, because a police dog, you can send them away to go grab the suspect. You're allowed to do that as a police officer. You're not allowed to send a dog against an opponent if you're a civilian. So you have a
Right.
certain perimeter around you, that the dog can protect the perimeter around you, but you can't send the dog to go bite somebody at a distance from you. So you're not allowed to do that. So
correct.
number one. Number two, anybody coming with you with a pistol or a knife, no dog will save you guys. I get phone calls from people who say, I want a very civil dog. And I says, are you sure you know what you're asking? Yes, I'm sure. I don't want a dog which will only bite equipment, will bite for real. Really? I says, I'm
Wow.
sorry, sir. I don't breed dogs like that. I can't help you. So to answer your question, when you're breeding dogs, especially dogs which are protection trained or capable of being protection trained, you have to look for the aggression which is appropriate aggression, and it's in the game of the sport, not for real. I've had dogs which would bite the man in the bite sleeve and bark at him aggressively, huff, 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 huff. And then the sleeve is dropped. You parade him with the sleeve. He's happy. The helper comes up to him a few minutes later and pets him, and there's no hard feelings because it was never designed to be real. It was
Right.
designed to be a game. Now, people say, well, that's not a real dog, will not protect me in real life. Well, first of all, how much protection do you need? Second of all, if you can make a dog bark in command, gib laut in German, gib laut, bark, bark, bark. If you have a deep male bark of a male German Shepherd and somebody's still approaching you and dog is putting on an aggressive display because you told the dog to fire up, now you're going to hold the dog, but you told him to fire up, right? And somebody keeps approaching you, you're in trouble, man. You're in trouble. So don't tell me you want a civil dog. No, you don't want a civil dog. If you have a
Yeah.
sport trained dog that can fire up on command and just bark aggressively, that alone should scare most people. So these
Yeah.
people who are,
Sometimes they
I
don't
don't know
know
what
what
I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, sometimes they don't know what they're really wanting. Adam Fields is asking a question. He's saying, how do you test for weak nerves and at what age?
So that's a very good question. So there's several tests for weak nerves. One done at a puppy stage and one done at an adult stage. Let me explain.
Okay.
There's an extremely well-known test called the Volhard puppy test, for those who haven't heard of it. Volhard, Volhard. It was designed by the people who are testing dogs for the blind to figure out which puppies are good for being highly trainable and which ones need to be washed out. They created a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being super submissive and 1 being super dominant. And there are tests where you throw an object on the floor, it makes a clanking sound to see if the dog startles but then recovers. You want to see sociability, the dog will come over to you or ignore you and not follow you or completely ignore you. You want a dog which will come to you versus hiding under a couch or hiding under a chair. That's showing fear, that's showing weak nerves. You want a dog which walks into the room like he owns the room, like, yeah, I'm here, I'm happy-go-lucky. Not a dog which cowers and slinks into a room. So the first step is you eliminate dogs which show fear as a puppy. That's the first stage. If they're super submissive, that's fear right there. they need to go to an older family, which is a
Okay.
very rigid schedule. You know, everything on the clockwork. Like breakfast is at 7 a.m., lunch is at 12 noon, dinner is at 5, or whatever the number is. In other words, that puppy can get a home, but has to go to an older couple, not to a young family with kids. That's number one. So by the 49th day, precisely the 49th day, not the 50th day and not the 34th day, this test must be administered on the 49th day of the puppy's life in a room they have never been in before. So they're away from the encouragement of their littermates and their mama.
Okay.
They are seeing the dog as it is in its own natural element without the parents or siblings involved. And I'm not going to describe the entire test for the sake of time. I'm sure you guys can look it up. Bullhard puppy test, very well-known test, been around for 50 years, I think. Now, so that's the first step. The first step is the testing of the puppy at a young age. You score them. You don't want the ones which are super dominant. You want a 2 or a 3. You don't want a 4 or a 5. It's a very well-known test, yes. And that's now it tests retrieve drive. Retrieve drive has been shown to be analogous to ability to be easily trained. You want good prey drive for a protection prospect. In fact, on my channel, there's a video I've made of how to test puppies for customers and which traits they exhibit and which customer to give them to based on those traits. I have a video on this very subject. So the first step is to eliminate the weak ones as puppies and give them to older people as
Correct.
pets. That's the first step. Now, let's say you have a puppy which is tests mostly 3s and 2s, and you know the puppy has good, not overly dominant, not overly submissive, good prey drive, good retrieve drive. Now you have a chance of good results. Now, then you socialize them to different sounds, like you play a recording, like I do for my puppies, with a vacuum cleaner sound, a blow dryer sound, a washing machine sound. In other words, household noises, gunfire, because you want to make the dog's nerves calm. For all these noises, you want them to think of it as white noise, like, whatever. So you start playing sounds for them at different ages so that the puppy gets accustomed to different noises and ignores them and doesn't startle by them. So that's socialization and desensitizing. That's still done at the puppy stage. Now you're at a 4-month-old puppy stage. You've reached past the selection criteria of ruling out the weakest ones. Now you have a puppy which is a mostly a 2 or a 3. Now you start playing tug, and you want to see if the dog's hair rises on the back of his back as you're playing tug. Now, if you're playing tug and the dog regrips, it's called a counter, and wants to tug, but it doesn't have its hair rise on the back of its neck, dog is not in fear of you. The dog is just playing in prey, but there's no defense. The dog is purely tugging as a game of tug. If you see the back of the hairs rise on the back of the dog as it's tugging with you, it's showing defense and prey at the same time. At that age, that's kind of weird to see defense at that age.
Okay.
The dog is trained through protection training, and you're seeing if the dog wants to win the toy or he fears the helper. Now remember, the helper should be an experienced helper who knows what he's doing and is purely not threatening the dog. That's why when I see videos of dogs tied on a table and they're teaching you protection, that's barbaric, man. That's teaching a dog in defense and in fear. Either fight back or I'm going to hit you. That's not the right approach. So anyhow, so when you're teaching protection, you got to work with a helper who really understands working the dog in prey versus defense. You have to really understand what you're doing. Don't just work with any Joe Blow that puts on the bite sleeve. That's not an experienced helper. You need somebody who's a sport helper, not somebody who just puts on the bite sleeve and says, "Oh, I'm a helper." I can put on the bite sleeve too. It doesn't make me a helper. So you need to work with very experienced people. That's the recommendation I will give you. Does the dog have the right genetics to do this? Dogs from German Shepherd show lines can't do this. It's been bred out of them. So you have to work with the gene pool that still has the protection instincts in them. In other words, you can't drive what's not there. Like I can't sing. So if you hire an opera trainer or a jazz trainer to teach me to sing, I enjoy music, but I can't sing. No matter how much training you give me, I lack the drive to sing well. So the same thing with a dog. If the dog is missing prey drive or missing any degree of defense drive, he'll never be a protection prospect. Sell him as a pet and move on to a dog which is genetically able to do it. So you must. So the second answer to the question is you must start off with a dog genetically capable of doing the work you're asking it to do. So the first step is you rule out the puppy which is weak-nerved or showing
Yes.
fear or submissiveness. Then you must start off dogs with the right genetics, generation after generation of dogs which have this characteristic. Not just this is a puppy, and people ask me, well, it's just a puppy, it's just a German Shepherd. And why is so much price? Because it's been genetically engineered for a specific job. Whereas
Right.
a dog from pet quality lines doesn't have these abilities. Therefore, you're asking for something which is impossible. You think all German Shepherds are the same. No, they're not.
They're
Or you're saying
not.
all bullies are the same. No, they're not. You have to understand the line you're getting and why you're getting it, and you have to breed with purpose. So the second answer to your question is get it from a line capable of doing the work in the first place. That's the second part of the answer. The third part of the answer is that when a dog is a fear biter, it will cower behind you and the owner and put on an aggressive display, bark, 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 bark. And the owner, not understanding what they're doing, will calm the dog, say, no, baby, no, 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 no. What the person thinking they're doing is they think they're comforting the dog. What the dog is thinking is you're encouraging the dog. So to the dog, you're encouraging its aggressive behavior.
Right.
Whereas to the dog, person thinks I'm comforting. It's not a child, it's a dog. Don't anthropomorphize dogs. They're not children with fur. They're dogs. Don't anthropomorphize them. They're not children with fur. They're dogs.
This
So
is
you
true.
must respect the animal for what it is, not for what you want it to be. So so dog hides behind the owner and puts on a big, loud, aggressive display, but hides behind you. The moment you were to walk away for some reason, and that person it feels threatened by was to approach closer, that dog would run away or would approach, take a cheap shot, and then run away and hide under the couch. That's a
Mm.
classic fear biter. It's a dog acting out of fear, not out of strength. Now, a dog acting out of strength will not bark if there's no threat present. Because if it meets a person that is not presenting any kind of threat, why would it bark?
Right.
So if a dog is putting on an aggressive display but there's nothing behind it except a bluff, you can see it right away. The dog is bluffing. The dog has nothing behind him. Dog is purely a coward putting on an aggressive display. By the way, you don't train like that dogs in protection. They're a coward. You don't train cowards. You only train strong dogs.
I can
That's my
understand
answer.
that.
It's a three-part answer. It's at the puppy stage, the right genetics, and the way the dog displays in an unpredictable situation, how he behaves. You then judge.
Alex, we've come up to the end of our clock, man. We're at 1
I'm
hour.
surprised we talked so long.
No, it's been,
dogs all day.
listen,
Dogs all day long.
listen, if people know that if there's one thing I have stressed that I don't know about, that maybe I should learn a lot more, is I'm not a dog trainer. I've never professed to be one. Are my dogs trained in my yard? They are trained based on my commands and my custom way of training, but by no means am I a trainer, nor do I tell people to copy me. So everything you were saying was actually quite interesting. I was
Thank you.
pretty much learning as you were going on, but our time has come up. So I'm going to put you on, let everybody know who you are, and let's do our outros. So
Okay.
I'll give the floor to you.
Well, thank you again for having me. I appreciate this audience. Please come visit my YouTube channel, Van Ganta House, or my website. If you want to reserve a puppy, our puppies go very quickly. Please reserve a year in advance because it takes a year to plan a breeding. So please reserve a year if you want a German Shepherd, that is. um, and I thank Raul and this audience for the time they gave me to speak. I hope I can educate people. I have an educational channel, and I think Raul does as well. And I thank you all for your time. This is Alex Ganta with Van Ganta House German Shepherds, and thank you and have a great day.
Absolutely. We love having you here, Alex. I want to thank you guys for joining us. As you know, I'm classifying this as breeding techniques. I will set it up as a particular playlist for every time that Alex has come on. If you want to play the playlist, it's going to be there specifically for that. Real quick, I see a couple of comments here. I enjoyed it. Alex says Adam Fields. Catch y'all on the next one. Jose and Derry. We got Shade Tree. So absolutely, I hope you guys learned something like I did. It's been Raul from the Q. Alex, don't jump off. It's been Raul from the Q, and I'll be catching you on the next one.